Hey everybody, how's it going? Doug here, one of the host, producers, and creators of the Genre of Your Life podcast, bringing you another review roundup episode this week. How are we doing? Happy November. We are close to Thanksgiving. Hope you have a great month of November so far. There's supposed to be a full show of the Genre of Your Life this week, in addition to the review roundup that Zeta and I did yesterday. But again, scheduling, things happen, traveling, stuff like that, things get in the way. So there'll be no full episode this week, but I hope to have a full episode of the Genre of Your Life podcast for you all before Thanksgiving, so look out for that. As always, guys, you can find the show on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Amazon Music, with a full audio show on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Midway Avenue Productions. While you're on YouTube, while you're on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, hit that follow button, hit that review button, leave a rating, leave a review. It helps us out so much. We want to thank you. We hit 1,000 followers on Instagram, which is huge, guys. Seriously, huge. Another thing, too, is that now we are literally going on a year of the show come today, which is crazy. So thank you for one great full year of the Genre of Your Life podcast. This has been honestly one of the biggest honors of my life. I had this idea in my head all throughout COVID. I'm like, what? During the pandemic, like maybe one day I can do it. I don't know. And then things started getting better. I was like, you know what? I can do a show, but who would be on? Who would I host it with? Who would I get on the show? But it's been one of the best things I've ever been a part of. I mean, I created the show obviously, but it's been very humbling and very just rewarding seeing the reaction that you guys have been following, also the reaction to the show, our out-theater reactions, whether it me and Nick doing our reactions to Hunger Games or to Expendables 4 or Joel hopping on saying how much he hates Disney, stuff like that. It's just been really this year has been awesome, and thanks to you all, you made the show something super special, and we all at the show, thank you so much for the ongoing support. It means the world to us, and yeah, again, thank you so much. But yeah, guys, on this review roundup episode, I'm going to be reviewing the highly anticipated new Hunger Games, The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. For some context, I absolutely love the Hunger Games franchise. I really do. I mean, I remember seeing the first one with Joel when we were in middle school, and now seeing how much this franchise has progressed and the fandom. And for me, it was I think Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 were all my birthday movies when I was in high school still. And Catching Fire came out 10 years ago, I think, this week, which is crazy to believe. That's my favorite of the franchise for sure. I'll do a ranking of the movies after my review, obviously, but Catching Fire has a big special place in my heart because it was my 16th birthday, and I had me and 20 of my friends went to the bowling alley in downtown Chicago, and we all got thrown out of that same bowling alley for bringing in McDonald's outside food, and we all kind of just mobbed, went over to the AMC in the same building to go see Catching Fire on opening weekend, and luckily they had 20 seats available for us, and we had 2 full rows of my friends and close friends at the time, just laughing, being obnoxious teenagers, just being very rowdy, very, again, we were teenagers. So that movie has a special place in my heart because that was a very special birthday to me growing up, but also he'll hate me for this, but in high school, when we saw the movie for my birthday, Jeffrey Wright, who's a phenomenal actor, he plays one of the actors in Catching Fire. And at the time, Joel kind of had more like some scruff, a little bit of a goatee to a degree. And Jeffrey Wright also with the same glasses as Joel too. So in the movie, my dear friend Femi, movie's really quiet. We see Jeffrey Wright's character on the screen for the first time, and Femi out loud goes, "Oh shit! Look, it's Joel!" And our entire 2 rows of people are just laughing our asses off. We're crying. I feel so bad for the other people in that theater opening weekend. Who are these obnoxious ass teenagers ruining this opening weekend for me? It's Catching Fire. What the hell? But we could not stop laughing. And we were all like, yeah, it's Joel. And Joel was so mad. He goes, man, I hate y'all. Y'all suck. And we're all making jokes, whatever. We're putting it on Instagram. We're putting it on Snapchat. Look, Joel's in the movie, being very obnoxious. Movie ends. We loved it. We walked out all up. Yeah, Joel was so good in the movie. Joel was great. And Joel was like, I hate y'all. Shut the hell up. And Femi, funny enough, goes, oh man, it was an honor sitting next to the guy in the movie. Congrats, Joel. And we all started busting out laughing again. So throughout high school, we would call him movie star or Hunger Games because of that day. That was really kind of this monumental day for us in high school. But anyway, yes, so this weekend Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes comes out this weekend. This is the prequel to the other movies. This is basically when Snow's kind of like he's a mentor. This is the 10th. This is like years way before Katniss gets joins the games. So it's kind of like Snow, young President Snow before he became President Snow. It's kind of like his rise. He's a mentor in this movie. He's becoming, he's part of the Capitol, but he's still an outsider, even though he's in the Capitol. And he's a mentor now to the 10th annual Hunger Games to this girl from District 12, Lucy Gray, who's a singer. She's it was the show, kind of how Katniss was all for the theatrics in the show as well. But he's assigned her to be her mentor, and it's kind of like their relationship of like him mentoring her, but deep down there's some kind of good in him, but like he's trying to impress the Capitol. He wants to be one of them. He wants to get this prize money. He wants to be accepted through his peers and the people of the Capitol. And it gets a very interesting premise of like the Hunger Games, because as we all know, it's battle royale. It's kids from every district, two from every district going crazy, try to kill each other and the other kids in the district. And it's a very wild premise as it is, but this is a prequel. This is going to be exploration of kind of like his story, his upbringing, stuff like that, and how he became, how the rise of kind of like who he became, as we all know him in the first Hunger Games, to Catching Fire, to Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. So it's kind of like his kind of origin story in a way. I'll get into right away. Actually, I love this movie. I really do. And Catching Fire is still my favorite, but I went in with somewhat expectations, because I will say Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 were kind of very underwhelming for me. I thought they were okay. They weren't as good as the first two. And you can see the box office, and I think critic reviews were kind of declining as well. I think that when the last two Hunger Games, the Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2 were coming out, the kind of era of YA young adult novel adaptations were kind of dying. Like Divergent was doing really bad. They canceled the last one because no one saw it. It cost them so much money. Harry Potter was done. It was just like, hey, this YA kind of craze is done. I mean, Twilight's been done for a couple of years. What do we have? And don't get me wrong, they still made a lot of money in Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2, but they weren't the same kind of level as quality. Or, I remember seeing Mockingjay Part 2 with Joelle and our friend Sebastian opening weekend, and there was no one there. And I'm like, wow, compared to 2 years ago or 3 years ago when the other movies came out, what happened? Because it was a decline, and you can argue maybe too much was not the good idea, because I felt because there was a movie every year, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, and it's still they're pushing these movies out obviously, but maybe it was a little bit too much for the audience, or maybe too much for the fans. But you go on the Box Office Pro or IMDb, you can see the reviews, and you see the box office kind of declining. You're like, maybe people are just checking out. And I think around that area, again, like I said, after that, there was not a lot of YA, or if there was YA, it was on Netflix. It was going to Netflix or HBO or Disney Plus or Hulu at the time, whatever. So, I mean, I think Maze Runner had the same issue. I think the last one came out 2018, and no one saw that. It was kind of a bit of a flop, because we were like, we're kind of done with the YA stuff. That was kind of like a period in time for movie going and audiences. So, but anyway, going to this one, I was kind of like, again, I love this franchise a lot. I'm a fan of it. It's a big part of, my, upbringing, as well as my teenage years, stuff like that. Francis Lawrence is coming back to direct this one. He also did Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 and Part 2. He also did a really good movie called Red Sparrow, which is very underrated with Jennifer Lawrence. It's brutal. It's a very brutal movie, but it's pretty damn good if you ask me. He's coming back. And then the writer of this movie, Michael Arndt, who I'm very, as a writer myself, I'm very interested in kind of just learning about different writers and different filmmakers. We've been doing this podcast now, and Michael Arndt has a great resume. He wrote stuff like Little Miss Sunshine, Toy Story 3. I think he won an Oscar for one of those movies. I think he won an Oscar for best original screenplay for Little Sunshine. But anyway, Toy Story 3, which is a great movie, Oblivion, and then he also wrote Catching Fire again, which is my favorite of the franchise. I'm like, oh, his writing is awesome. He also I think he worked on stuff like A Walk in the Woods, Inside Out, and his last movie he ever wrote with J.J. Abrams was The Force Awakens, which is my favorite Star Wars movie of the Disney era of Star Wars. And then after that, nothing. And I was like, wow. So I think what I read online, he retired. I'm done writing. I mean, if the way you go out, you write Star Wars Force Awakens, hey man, that's a good way to retire. You're on top, and that's before the kind of like the divisiveness of Star Wars kind of came after that, thanks to Disney and Lucasfilm, stuff like that. It was just the fandom was kind of just very toxic at the time too. But hey, go on top. I respect it. So then I heard he came out of retirement for Ballad of Songbirds Snakes. I was like, oh hell yeah, I'm so into this because he wrote my favorite Star Wars movie of the Disney era, but he also wrote my favorite Hunger Games. I'm like, this is awesome. So I was already hyped for that regardless. So I was like, let's go. We're back in this. What's awesome. But again, going in, excited, but also had some kind of reservations. Again, I like the director, I like the writer, I like the cast. Big Viola Davis fan. I'm a huge Jason Schwartzman fan. Definitely a fan of Peter Dinklage. I'm a newfound fan of Rachel Ziegler. I know she has some controversy with her Snow White, take, and it's, not the best PR move from her, I would say, but teach their own. But I thought she was fantastic in Spielberg's West Side Story. I mean, she was incredible. She has a great range as an actress, but also she can sing. She has a beautiful voice. But that's my Siri. But I knew that, but also I didn't know the actor playing young Snow, and I'm like, cool. They didn't cast like Timothy Chalamet or Ansel Elgort or Finn Wolfhard or whatever. Like this was a newcomer, new actor. I was like, awesome. I like that. I like seeing that I like seeing new talent in a big franchise like this. And his name was Tom Blythe. I'll start by this again. I love this movie. I really, really did. Right, when the movie starts off, it brings you in of like, hey, here we are. We're setting the mood like this. Here's the vibe. Let's go. And it was so cool that the opening shot. Me and Nick saw this in IMAX at the press screening, and the first scene was IMAX, and I was like, "Yep, you're in," because it's a very capturing scene. But how immersive the IMAX is, it's like it really brings you in. It kind of hooks you in, and like, here we go. You're into this now. And again, I'm a big IMAX nerd and fanboy. I love that. Hey, guess what? Boom. Opening shot, IMAX. You're into this now. We're here now. It's the same, the world building. It's the same, the kind of immersive nature of the film. Loved it. Loved them. Okay, cool. And then as it progresses, you're like, all right, here we go. We're in for the ride. This might be my second favorite of the movie. Second favorite of the franchise, excuse me. And here's why. The acting in this is superb from everyone. From Jason Schwartzman to Viola Davis to Tom Blythe to Rachel Ziegler, Peter Dinklage. The list goes on and on and on. All the tributes, all the other mentors. This acting is top tier. And I think that in a lot of YA and other kind of like properties like that, or book adaptations, the acting could be hit or miss, could be a little too much or be a little too underdone. You just don't know. I truly thought the acting in this was superb and very, very impressive. I was like, wow, everyone's bringing their A game to this and really committing to this adaptation because there's still a fan base for this movie, even though it's been now 8 years since the last one. So they're trying to bring something back, which is, again, it's been gone for 8 years. But hey, you know what? We have a lot of fan base here. A lot of people love this book as well. We got to do it justice. And I thought everyone was casted perfectly. I didn't feel anyone was either not casted well or like, oh, it could have been this other person's role. No, I thought everyone was casted to a T very well, very, very, very well. The chemistry between the characters of Snow and Lucy is very intriguing because they're both people who have struggled before, and I don't want to spoil too much, but like you see how Snow is struggling, even though he's in the privileged capital, and Lucy, who's from the districts, who has struggled her whole life, and it's like you can see that they're both broke. They have both come from broken backgrounds, but their status of like class and where they live is different, but they're very similar in their own ways. And I'm like, oh, I like that. And I thought the chemistry between both Tom Blythe and Rich Ziegler was very believable, very authentic, and like you felt for them of like, wow, I kind of want to see them win. I kind of want to see them get out of this and win. How they get through that, I don't want to spoil it, but it's very, very intriguing. It's very captivating for sure. Like I said, this movie is very immersive. I give this a lot of props to Francis Lawrence, his DP, cinematographer, everything. Again, he uses IMAX for that, and I love that. This again, there are a lot of CGI. Don't get me wrong, but the way Francis Lawrence and his DP and his whole cinematography team capture Panem, capture the Capitol and the arena is very immersive, and it felt like you're in it. And I think it's why they shot with IMAX, because again, shot in IMAX, you have more room to kind of like show like how big this world is, how immersive this is. And I think that I like seeing more filmmakers take the chance on IMAX. So IMAX, this IMAX is a 190. It's not the full IMAX is 143, which Christopher Nolan shoots on. I think Jordan Peele shot Nope on that. Dune was shot on that too. But not the full, but like the more easy, more attainable traditional IMAX is the 190. No Way Home was shot on 190. A lot of the Marvel films are shot on 190. We don't shoot with IMAX cameras. You shoot films for IMAX. Top Gun Maverick is a great example. That movie was shot for IMAX, not with IMAX. And I thought it was very smart for Francis Lawrence to shoot this movie on IMAX, just because he shot Catching Fire with IMAX, and that really worked of how he's able to kind of like capture just the games, how dark and how brutal it is, and how big these worlds are. And I think if you didn't have IMAX for that, you'd be like, I'm kind of missing something to a degree. But him having IMAX was a very smart move. I'm glad we saw it in IMAX. I would recommend seeing this IMAX for sure. It's just really, really smart how he able to film this world in the best way possible, which is IMAX. You also want to know about too is that in Catching Fire, there's just when she goes up, something happens to Katniss Everdeen. I won't spoil for that Catching Fire if you haven't seen Catching Fire, which I recommend. When she goes up to the games, there's a big dramatic moment happens to her. She's going up the tube, up to the games, up to the arena, and I love how Lawrence and his DP shoots this. The black bars on the screen slowly go away, and they go away, and then boom, it's the IMAX shot, and I love that because he brought it back here when they go to the arena. You see the same thing, the black bars, so they go up and down, they go away, and then boom, it's full IMAX, and I'm like, oh yes, bring that back. I love when filmmakers kind of like really utilize their IMAX to scene transitions and shot transitions. I'm a sucker for that, and I love that you brought it back for this one. I love that, I think in the other 4 movies we see like, yeah, if you're in the Capitol, you're eating good, you have the best food, you have the best fashion, you have the best culture, you have the best, you have all these resources that make you feel, rich and wealthy and privileged. In this one, it really shows that, hey, even though you might be in the Capitol, people are still struggling. People are still being evicted from their housing in their apartments and houses. People can't put food on the table for their family. They can't afford their medication. They're getting sick. And I love that they showed that in this movie because I feel like we kind of like, oh, they're all kind of like rich snobs in the Capitol. I love to kind of flip the switch and kind of show people who are struggling in the Capitol, and Snow is one of them. You see Snow just really kind of like, he's hungry. He's desperate for food. He knows what it be to be hungry and to be just tired and just be like broken down. And I'm like, I love that. I love the different approach of showing the broken side of the Capitol. Even though, again, it shows like, even though there's difference between the Capitol and the districts, there's people are still struggling on both sides. There's people who are still in poverty on both sides. You know what? I think it's like, people are very more similar than you think they are different. I love that we kind of explores that theme of that. And I loved how they showed the original arenas. In the Katniss days, the arena's like very high tech. It's very built up. It's a dome almost, and sometimes it's very kind of like updated, whatever. They show the original arena that's been there for the past 9 games. This is the 10th one in this movie. And you see blood, you see blood on the walls, you see a lot of remains from the other games. I'm like, kind of the haunting, like if these walls could speak, what would they say? What did they see and stuff like that? And I'm really glad they showed us like the entire arena, like what it is, what it used to be compared to what we saw in the Katniss days. And again, I love seeing the remains, the blood, like the broken down. It's still intact, but like you can see like things have been left behind from the past 9 games. I'm like, ooh, I really, really like that. Like I said, cinematography to me, score, production design, VFX is top tier. I think with a budget like this, also with a franchise like this, you got to bring your A game with all your production and your visual effects and everything, stuff like that. Everything was top tier, and I'm like, wow, like you guys made me care about Hunger Games again. I want to watch the other ones now because this was Nick's first Hunger Games that I ever saw, and I'm glad going with the prequel first. Now you can watch the 1 and Catching Fire, Mockingjay Part 1 to Part 2. He's good to go. But I think everything was top tier, and I love that. Yes, there's a lot of things that are shot on a soundstage or a studio or a green screen. Let's point out that not post that whatsoever. But when they do transition from like the big sets and the the CGI scenes, stuff like that, and the big soundstage or whatever, and they're on location, the on location shots are just beautiful, and the cinematography is just incredible. I'm looking up who did the cinematography for he did the last couple of movies with Francis Lawrence. Let me see. Joe Willems. Props to you, my friend. You have a fantastic eye for certain shots and making things look just really outstanding. He shot. Yeah, he shot Catching Fire, Mockingjay Jay, Part 1, Part 2, and he shot Ballad of Songbirds Snakes. So, yeah, his cinematography on this is remarkable. And when they're really on the location, you feel like the cold, you feel the wet of like the rain, you feel the sun, you feel the summer, stuff like that. You feel like the dismay when they're in the arena. You feel the locations, and I'm like, wow. Maybe it's also props to seeing IMAX. Don't get me wrong. But the cinematography really kind of transports you to to Panem, to the capital, to the districts. It's really remarkable, and I love that. Like, even though this is still a big budget movie, they're still utilizing their sets to the fullest, and they're still shooting on location, getting the green, getting the blue, the water, the green of the grass, the sun, the white of the snow, whatever. I really give this movie props for having a good blend of on location sets and also using the green screen and soundstage as well. Loved. There's a lot of great camera work and establishing shots of characters, locations. Like it's very, again, you feel the spectacle of this movie a lot. I think Francis Lawrence has now he's now been in this role now for more than 10 years. He knows certain shots. He knows how to like really capture Panem and the district and the capital, stuff like that. He does a great job of kind of just like really bring the cameras to like the faces and to like the to their hair, to their costumes, whatever. It looks just, again, it's the shots are just really establishing what they are, what this is, and I think that the camera work on this is by far might be some of the best of the franchise. Might even be better than Catching Fire at times. I'm like, wow, the way he has the shots angled on Viola Davis in her batshit crazy lab, or how the cameras on the tributes during the game, or the bodies from the tributes, or on the mentors in this big room, or the big screen where everybody's watching the games. It's shot just really top tier, almost like a masterclass of camera shots and angles. And I was like, whoa, I am blown away by this. I'm very impressed with this. Also, the way that the camera captures the battle scenes, or the killings or the deaths. Like, it's like, for a PG-13 movie, it's very brutal, and it really shows of like, whoa, like it shows like how close the camera gets to like the brutality of it all. And I was like, you're in it, you feel the brutality, you feel the darkness of like, oh my gosh, this is just kids killing each other. What's going on here? But again, the camera work is a great job. It's kind of just capturing all that relentlessness and also just the brutality of it all. Again, really top tier. Again, brutal. That this might be one. I think this is like right behind this Catching Fire. Might be more than that. For a PG-13 movie, there were some deaths and kills where I was like, oh my god, this is PG-13. They're getting a lot away with a lot of stuff. Yeah, which I'm not against at all. I mean, wow, I was very impressed with how much they got away with. I'm like, it's brutal at times. I'm like, oh my goodness. And also I love showing how brutal these games were before Katniss. Because Katniss now during her games, it's like they have equipment, they have weapons, they have those supplies. In the 10th movie, they got bricks, they got swords, they got pitchforks, they got swords, they got other knives. It's like they have the most basic weapons and the most basic ways to defend themselves. And I love seeing that. Like, wow, we're seeing the kind of like how down bad, how this brutal it was originally. So I mean, I wouldn't say the Katniss are polished. Don't get me wrong, but like you're seeing really how far these games have come since now and then. It's like, whoa, it's showing a lot of just like, wow, like they really had like simple knives to stab someone, or a pitchfork, or just kind of just like a machete to just to kill someone. It's like, wow, you don't have all the fancy stuff. You just have these really kind of just like simple and basic tier weapons. I'm like, wow, and it sticks with you more, I think, than like the more high flashy weapons that they had, or the crossbow or the bow and arrow that she had and Katniss had in her movies. I'm like, whoa. So shows that a lot. What I think this movie does really well is too is really hitting the emotional arcs. I think there's a lot of emotional arcs in other movies. Don't get me wrong, but in this one, like the emotion, it gets really emotional at times. There's one character, I'm not gonna say what, that has special needs, and my brother has special needs. He has Down syndrome, and in the movie, this girl has Down syndrome too. And the moment you see her, the moment I saw her, I was like, I started getting emotional. I was like, oh my god, it's like, what if my brother was, was called to be in the Hunger Games? How do I live with myself? And that to me really pulled on my emotional strings of like, wow, like I can relate to this to a degree of like I'm kind of watching my brother if he had to if he had to do this was real life, like how would I process this? And again, I love seeing that. I love seeing people with special needs getting their time, getting their recognition, seeing their time on the big screen. But there's some times where it really hits the emotional chord, and I think that Francis Lawrence, Michael Arndt, and his co-writer really do a good job of establishing like this is messed up. There's a lot of heartbreak. It's emotional. Like don't get too attached because you know how this ends. And I'm like, oh my gosh, but they don't shy away from how the emotional times and the emotional aspects of the characters and their backgrounds, how sad this is, because this is sad. If you're seeing these kids, battle to the death until one wins, it's like, oh my gosh. So again, I mean, I'm only 25, but I feel different than how I felt about maybe when I saw the first one. I was 13, 14 years old. It's I guess I grown up, but matured a little bit. But they do a great job of managing spectacle, but really, really hitting on some really amazing emotional aspects of the story. The humor works. Oddly enough, the humor works really well. And what Nick and I both said in our theater reaction, that the humor doesn't feel crowbarred in or forced in. Like it feels natural and like it feels like at place. I think you see like it's kind of like these big budget, spectacle movies. I think Marvel's very guilty of this now than they ever been. It's like, they try like, sad scene, emotional scene, natural scene. How about some tacos? It's like, wait, what? Like they throw in a joke to throw in the joke, and it's like, yeah, okay, but it didn't feel earned or it didn't feel like that was the right place. But I think with this movie, like when the humor is there, the humor really works. And I think Jason Schwartzman is definitely like the funniest part of the movie. Again, there was times where me and Nick were just laughing our asses off. The whole theater was laughing their asses off. I'm like, wow, there's killing going on, but we're still laughing thanks to Jason Schwartzman's character. Me and him were very surprised that the humor worked the way, how much it did, but also the way it did too, because it didn't take away from the brutality of it all or the sad nature of like the environment that they're in. The humor works, and I'm really glad. Again, I'm glad that it didn't feel forced, whatever. But again, I'm a big Schwartzman fan. I think he was awesome in this. He's one of my favorite characters in this movie. He's kind of playing Stanley Tucci's character in a bit. They're two different characters. I'll put that right now. But like you can see like some similarities between Stanley Tucci's character and his character in this one. But there's different time periods for sure. You feel for these characters. Like I said, you feel for these characters. Like the ones with the most tragic backgrounds, like you just feel for them. Like you want them to win, but you know how this ends. You're just like, oh, I'm rooting for these people, but like, how will they get out of this? How will they survive? And again, I think what Francis Lawrence does really well as the writing is that they really dive deep, not deep, but they really showcase like how a lot of these tributes just have broken backgrounds, that they come from nothing, or they come from parents that are gone or dead, or family members that are just gone or working, or just like working their lives away. So it's just like, wow, you feel for them, and you're showing their tragic backgrounds really kind of feed to the story of like how sad it is. And I think for a prequel, even though we know how sad and tragic it is in the other movies, they do a good job of keeping that same level of tragedy and dramatics to this. And I was very, very, very impressed with this, but also again, it shows of like how messed up this is, how fucked up this is, and how just like this is so despicable, but it's the world that they live in. The progression of Snow and how he became evil and the arc was very fascinating, because like you can see his hatred build at times. But what Nick said, and also I think he said in our reaction, or maybe even before too, is that like you can see like he's a pretty decent dude for the most part, but like one thing will snap and he goes apeshit. He goes fucking nuts. You're just like, whoa, like you were fine a minute ago. What happened? But, like the smallest thing, you can see how unhinged and how unwell he's at times, even though he's he's very charming. He's very charming. You think he means well, but one thing will go off and he goes bonkers. You're like, oh, here we go. And they're kind of poking holes at his kind of just like his ego and his kind of like his charm, because we all know we all know who he becomes, but you see it. You definitely see the progression slowly build and his outbreaks and how he becomes just like, again, unhinged and unwell, and just becomes very just like angry at the world and his environment. It's like, wow, they're really showing this progression quite well, and also how we're getting there. So like that. I already went over how I thought, Princess Lawrence, to me, I think his direction is very rivals of the first one he did, which was Catching Fire. It was stuff like I Am Legend, which I love so much. Also, again, I love Red Sparrow a lot too. So I feel like this is one of his definitely strongest directing jobs. I feel like, yes, again, he's known this role for more than 10 years, but this, to me, I think he definitely rivals Catching Fire as his best direction of all the movies he's done personally. I think he's still the right guy to do these movies, because I feel like, prequels and sequels, like, who do you get on board, who's still involved, whatever. And I think, what's what David Yates did Harry Potter, Order of the Phoenix, Half-Blood Prince, Deathly Hallows. He did 4 movies, and then he was brought on to do the Fantastic Beasts movies. And I love the first Fantastic Beasts movies. Fantastic Beasts movie, I really do. But 2 was kind of like, and 3 to me was kind of like, And also, I'm like a massive Harry Potter fan. Like that's my franchise. I grew up with that franchise. I read all the books with my dad. That's a big part of my life. So I still think he was the right guy, because he still has his stamp on the movies. I think it was smart for Francis Lawrence to come back to it. People might disagree on that. I won't argue with that. I feel like people are like, oh man, give a new director a chance. Maybe he or she can really kind of like bring something new to it. I can't disagree with that. I can't argue with that. But to me, I was like, I do like consistency in films, and I'm glad that they brought back Michael Arndt to write the screenplay, but also they brought back Francis Lawrence too. So I'm like, you know what? I like consistency in movies. I'm glad they brought him back. I was very impressed with his direction and his storytelling in this. To me, again, to me, this reminded me of how great the first Fantastic Beasts film was, and then how 2 and 3 coming up. So I would hope that they want to do. They do another one. We'll see how this one does, both box office and critic wise. I think my fellow critics are not liking the way that much as I thought they were going to like it. I think it's now 65% Rotten Tomatoes, so not terrible, but not the best either. But to me, I think it still captures the essence and the magic in a way of the other movie, of Catching Fire and the first Hunger Games. Is how the first Fantastic Beasts really kind of captured the magic of Harry Potter and the Wizarding World. Then it kind of went downhill from there. You're like, oh, this wasn't as special as I thought it was going to be. So that's just me personally. But like I said, I really love this movie a lot. But it's all movies and all TV shows that I see and watch. I do have some cons. I know. Boo, tomato. No, I have some cons, unfortunately. There are some things that aren't mentioned again, and I'm very big on following up on things you establish or people that are introduced in movies or shows, and certain characters that are not mentioned again. There's one character in particular that something happens to her and it's never brought up again. It's like, whoa, that was kind of pretty of a big deal in the scene. Where did she go? What happened to her? So I was like, all right. And there's also, other characters too. I won't spoil it, but I'm like, oh yeah, what happened to them? Why aren't they back? What happened to them? Are they still relevant? It just kind of showed they're kind of just there, kind of just all right, they're just there, but they're not brought up again. Like I say, consistency. If you're gonna introduce something or introduce a character, and then something happens to them or something kind of happens to them that off screen or on screen, it's bring it up again. It's well, why did you even bring it up in the first place? You could have just been hey, we're not including this. But that kind of felt. What I'm seeing a lot from my fellow critics and the audiences online is that this movie's in 3 parts: part 1, part 2, and part 3. I believe the book is in 3 parts as well. It's all one movie. I think that the first 2 acts are incredibly strong, very solid, very tight. I do think the 3rd act falls off just a bit, because it's a big 180 from what was going on in the movie. You're like, okay, we're here. Okay, intrigue us. I was still very intrigued. I was still very interested in the story, but I think a lot of people are saying the same thing, that the 3rd act feels a little bit rushed, that there could have been spent more time with these certain characters, these certain environments. This movie was at 2 hours and 40 minutes. Again, also I thought the pacing was great. I thought the pacing was like very sharp and very clear. It definitely drags a little bit in the third part, which again I can't disagree. I didn't bother me too much, I will say, but acts part 1 and part 2 definitely feel the strongest out of all three. So I see the criticism of like, oh man, they should have spent more time exploring these characters' depths and relationship, post part 1 and part 2. So I do think this movie could have benefited from being a bit longer. Again, I don't mind long movies at all. You keep us engaged, you have a good pace, let's go for it. So I think that could have benefited a little bit too. I mean, I'm glad they didn't do this part 1, the movie's in 2 parts. I've been like this movie came out, the next year, that part 2 of the book, that to me would have been like, all right, because I think you kind of lose momentum how Mockingjay part 1 and part 2, you're like, okay, it's a year later, whatever, sure. So I get it, but I will say acts part 1 and part 2 are definitely the strongest of the entire movie. Snow's family plays a big part of this movie, and his father's brought up a lot in this movie, but I feel like it was kind of like it just mentioned and talked about, but they don't do a deep dive or exploration to like his father, because Penning is such a big deal to the Capitol and people in the Capitol, but like it's kind of like, oh yeah, your father this and your father that. I think they could have explored his dad and Snow's dad and like his dad's background and his impact that still lingers in the Capitol, because it's brought up a lot, but they don't dive too deep into it. I'm like, ooh, they should have maybe spent more time kind of like explain the significance and the importance of his dad and like the impact that he has on Colanius or whatever Snow's life, and how it's affecting him as an adult and how it will affect him, down the road. So I thought it was kind of like, oh, I wish they kind of explored more of that. I think it's been very intriguing, very interesting to me at least. Hunter Schafer, who's great in Euphoria, she's phenomenal in Euphoria. She plays his cousin Tigress in this, and I think Tigress is seen or mentioned in the other movies, I want to say. Someone said that she did. I'm like, I don't remember her personally. So I do the whole rewatch of the franchise too. I think she's underutilized because she's a great actress and she's in a lot of the promotion, a lot of the marketing. She has maybe a moment or two to shine, but I felt like they kind of underutilized her because their chemistry between Tom Blythe and Hunter Schafer is very, very, also very, very intriguing, very, very attractive to a degree, but. And also, her character is very kind of like has a lot to offer, but you don't use her to like the extent that I thought they were going to use her, or like use her to like really kind of like impact the story. So I was like, okay, I guess, but like I think they kind of did her a little bit dirty. I think they should have maybe used her a bit more, have her more of an impact on Snow's life and his kind of stories. I think that would have been like kind of cool to like also explore. But again, also great actor still. I think you definitely want to utilize a talent like that too. As I said, with the part 3 of the 3-part movie, Lucy's and Snow's relationship in the third part of the movie definitely feels developed, but it doesn't feel fully developed. Like I said, I think more time being spent would have kind of benefited the movie. Because there are like you want to see like how they progress post part 1 and part 2 and like what's going to happen with them now, whatever. And also like I said part 3 part 3 of the movie. Like I said, there's a thing that kind of go unresolved or kind of like like what happened. Kind of, oh yeah, here's what happens. Blah, blah, blah. It's like well, it's a pretty big thing kind of gloss over. So I would have spent more time kind of like wrapping up with a kind of like with a better like cathartic closure in a way. So that to me, again, I said I want to think about it again. I love this movie, but I do think part 3 of the movie definitely struggles at times to like really, what do you want to establish? What do you want to like leave off at? So, it is what it is. And also too, I think Catching Fire does this really well. And I think the first one does it pretty well too, is that they don't spend a lot of time setting up the tributes. The other tributes, other than some Lucy and one or two, I feel like they get the Capitol and the game starting. I think the first Hunger Games and the Catching Fire do a good job kind of establishing the other tributes, who you can be fighting, who you're going to be surviving against, stuff like that. And I do think maybe more time kind of spent with the tributes, not a lot, but the way they did with the first Hunger Games and Catching Fire would have been kind of interesting to see. Like, okay, this is this person, this is this person, this person is that. I mean, they kind of show it during the actual game, during the actual battle, but from being a fan of this franchise and seeing them establish other tributes before a bit better, that to me I think would have also been beneficial to the movie as well. But with that said, like I said, I really love this movie. I'm seeing it again for Zeta's birthday on Saturday this weekend. So I'm looking forward to seeing it again. Like I said, second of the franchise, right behind Catching Fire. So I would rank them. Actually, for them, I'll give this movie honestly a solid 8.5 out of 10. I really, really dug this movie a lot. Like I said, seeing the IMAX, the IMAX cinematography in the camera is really kind of makes the movie kind of feel like larger than life, a big spectacle. So see it in IMAX for sure. See it in the biggest IMAX you can. See it in your local IMAX, whatever. If you drive to an IMAX, see it there too. But it's definitely worth the IMAX for sure. Not IMAX Dolby, but I think you would get some really great IMAX cinematography if you see it in IMAX. It's like 8.5 out of 10. Loved it. Had a good time with it. Can't wait to see it again. So I would rank the franchise now. I would say Catching Fire, still my favorite one. This one. Then I would say the first Hunger Games. And then I would go Mockingjay Part 2. I like Mockingjay Part 1, Part 2. I do, but like they're not really kind of like... Part 1 is very kind of forgettable, if you ask me. I haven't seen them in a long time, but I'll probably rewatch it this weekend or maybe next week. Part 2, Mockingjay Part 2, and then Part 1. Because there are some things in Part 2 of Mockingjay that I really like. Like, ooh, some of the scenes, some of the kind of like the battle scenes, like on the survival stuff is kind of interesting too. But yeah, so Catching Fire, Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes, the first Hunger Games, Mockingjay Part 2 and Part 1. So, like I said, if they do more, I would definitely watch more, but I think this one is a very, very, very good setup to like the movies that we have already. So yeah, guys, see it this weekend, see it over Thanksgiving. Like I said, I'm very curious to see how this movie does box office wise, opening weekend, if the legs will have good legs or not, how the fans will react to this movie. So yeah, I'm looking forward to seeing it. And if so the movie, let us know in the comments down below, whether it's on a Spotify, Apple Podcast, or on YouTube, or DM us on Instagram, or put it on our Theater Reaction on Instagram, or TikTok, whatever. We want to hear your thoughts. But yeah, guys, like I said, I'll close this up. Like I said, it's officially been a year we've been doing the show. Hopefully our audio's been sounding better. I remember our first comment ever on YouTube a year ago. Nice person. They were just saying like, hey, like, interesting. Not gonna lie, your audio could use some work. And the second comment was, man, your audio fucking sucks. And I replied back like, thank you. That's when we were still on YouTube. I was using like a cheap gaming headset from Amazon. I didn't have a mic at that time. I didn't know how to like mix and record audio. Like I used to mix all the tracks together, and I was what you supposed to do. I was doing all the wrong things. I was doing all the wrong things that you shouldn't do. But I know a lot more now when I edit the show with the boys. When I edit the show on my own. So, like I said, a year of doing this show has been really just remarkable. We're still growing. Like I said, we hit 1,000 followers. So keep on following us. Keep on liking our reactions and our reviews and listen to the show. Like I said, that really, when you guys review and rate the show, give us how many stars you want, whatever. Give us a review, whether it's on Spotify or Apple or YouTube but most on the podcast feed, whether it's on Amazon, Pandora, whatever you listen to the show on. The reviews and ratings really mean the world to us because it shows that you are engaged with us, you are listening to the show, you like the show, and it means, again, it truly means the world to me and to the boys. I know that for sure. So thank you guys. Thank you so much for the ongoing support. It really means the world to us. Like I said, too, hopefully the boys and I will be back next week with a full episode for you all during Thanksgiving week, hopefully before. If not on Thanksgiving or the day after, just listen to on the car ride. Or if you're traveling somewhere, you listen to the show. But anyway, yes. If you are traveling this week, Thanksgiving, safe travels. Be safe, be well, hug your family, hug your friends. Enjoy this time with loved ones. It's the holiday season. Enjoy yourself. Have fun, eat some good food. Do some good drinks. Go wild, get crazy. It's family time. I'm looking forward to seeing my family, spending time with Zay's family from Thanksgiving, and always spending time with you guys. So thank you so much. And again, enjoy your weekend. Enjoy the Hunger Games. And as always, guys, we'll see you at the movies.